This is what patients see when they wake up. To speed this up, I am going to basically pretend that I've already come in. I have checked my high pressure cylinders, which are in the back. I've checked my board-on gauges, made sure that they're reading appropriately. I've turned on my pipeline and made sure those board-on gauges are reading appropriately. And so the first thing I would do is I'd make sure that my vaporizers are nice and secure. They're seated properly, the caps, they're filled, and the caps are nice and secure. I would also come down here to what is called a CO2 absorber. And that scrubs all the CO2. It takes the CO2 out of the circuit and allows the patient to breathe more fresh gas. And so I'd make sure that those are the appropriate color and that they're seated as well, because those are two common sources of leaks. I'll come and actually open up my drawer and find a bulb. This is just a bulb that you'll check your to make sure that your circuit has no leaks in it. So first I'd make sure that this is working appropriately and making sure that it's staying occluded for 10 seconds. And we'll say that it does. So then what I do is I connect it here. This is called your common gas outlet. And I'd flip this lever. And I'd squeeze this and occlude. The bulb should hold for 10 seconds. And so we'll say that that happened. We'll leave that hanging there. And then what I'll do is try and open up a vaporizer. This bulb should inflate once I open that vaporizer.
There we go.
So then I'd deflate that again. And that should hold for 10 seconds. And while that is holding, if there were other vaporizers here, I would try and open these as well. And they should not let me because of what is called an interlock system. With one open already, no more should be able to open so that I can't deliver a combination of gases. So I do that with each vaporizer. And again, testing this and making sure that it occludes for 10 seconds. Next step is to open up my calibration system. In there's a cap that I can flip open. And what I want, this is the O2 calibration system. I want this to regulate and calibrate to room air. So I have it seated here without touching it. And then I can flip my machine on. My machine is booting up. I can check my flow meters. This is air, nitrous, and O2. And these are called Thorpe tubes. They have little measurements that tell you how many liters per minute you are, or how much you are giving your patient per minute. So first I would turn on my nitrous, and I would go the full flow range, and then I would do the same thing with the oxygen, and you'll hear a loud sound, and then I would come back down with my oxygen. So what will happen when I get to 4 centimeters is that the nitrous will fall as well. And that is a safety mechanism to make sure that I don't give a hypoxic or a low O2 mixture. So if this is off, I don't want to be giving nitrous because then you're not giving oxygen. So I do the same thing with the air. And go all the way up to full flow range and then go back down. And while I'm looking at these, I want to make sure that the bobbin is spinning and that there's no cracks or condensation within these Thorpe tubes. So now that I've calibrated the cap to room air, 21%, I can first, like what I like to do is check my alarm, my low O2 setting. So I'll set it to something higher than 21 so that it will read that this is a low O2 alarm. And then I go back down. And then now that it's to 21, I can also calibrate it. So I'm just calibrating the system. And I'll start that. So this takes a few moments. So while I'm waiting, I'll check around my OR here and make sure I have all my monitors. So a blood pressure monitor, an EKG, an end tidal, which is this, and it's connecting here to the circuit, a temperature probe, and an O2 sat probe. And if I need one, a peripheral nerve stimulator. So I would also come around here while this is still calibrating and look at what is called my scavenging system. So that scavenges air and waste air and sends it to a vacuum, that purple, that says vacuum, and takes it out of the room. So we're not breathing in a bunch of gas. Otherwise we'll go to sleep. So I also want to make sure that the bag is flat and that some machines have a ball here that tells you that it's adequately suctioning appropriately. This now says complete. So I'll take this cap and I'll screw that back on. So now that I've visually inspected my scavenging system, I'm going to actually test it now. So to do that, I grab my circuit. This is the mouthpiece, HME, and the Y piece. There's an inspiratory and an expiratory limb. You'll see things like this in an ICU. So I take the mouthpiece off, and I occlude it with my hand. There's also a knob down here that you can use if you want. So what I do is, once I occlude it, I want to make sure that this pressure gauge here doesn't go below 0. If this were to read below 0 centimeters of water, that would mean that there is suction, and you do not want to suction your patient when you connect them to your vent. It's not reading below 0 centimeters of water, so that's good. So then what I would do is I would flush. This is my O2 flush button. I would flush the system with O2. And what I'm making sure is happening is that my circuit is not reading above 10 centimeters of water, that my bag is filling appropriately, and that here I'm reading, can't see, and that here I'm reading at least 90% O2. I just want to be able to tell that my machine can read 90% of oxygen, and it does. That was all with my APL valve, which is your adjustable pressure limiting valve, open. So then I'd flip that closed to 70. I would hit my O2 flush again, and on my monitor I want to pressurize it to 30 centimeters of water, and I want to make sure that I can hold that for 10 seconds. That's telling me that I can deliver a nice pressurized breath or PEEP if I needed to. With this filled, I'd also want to come around and check my scavenging system to make sure that balloon was filling as well. That means that this system is working appropriately. And so then I would open my APL valve back up, and I do it this way so that I don't release a bunch of dust and particles into the air. So now we're done with that. Oh my gosh. Now that I've checked my scavenger system, I want to actually check my ventilator. So what I would do is I take this circuit, and I would take the mouthpiece off and use this bag, connect it to my Y piece, and use it as an artificial lung. I'd flip my ventilator on to ventilator mode, and what will happen is these bellows will start to rise and fall. I'll turn up some air, and I want to make sure, before I start my complete check, these bellows need to be rise all the way to the top. So I'll turn my rate up to kind of facilitate that and make that go a little bit faster. So they're at the top, and so when I'm checking the ventilator, I want to check it at flows that I would actually deliver to a patient. So I'll start with 5. So what I'm checking for here is that the tidal volume that I set, I want my machine to be delivering that. So it takes a few cycles to work up to it. Oh, there you go. So now I'm at 600. The machine is delivering what I told it to. So I will come here, and this is all part of the ventilator check. I'm looking at my bellows are rising and falling up appropriately, that my pressure gauge is coming back down pretty close to below 10 or closer to 0, and not stacking breaths with each one, so going above 40 centimeters of water. I'm also looking at my unidirectional valves here. On inspiration, the inspiratory valve will float, and this will stay seated. On expiration, the expiratory valve will float, and the inspiratory will stay seated. And so you can just see and look at those. You will also be able to see here, with my artificial lung, it inflating and deflating. So it's on 5 liters. I've checked all the things that I need to check. So I'll do that again at a lower flow, let's say 2 liters per minute. So I'll be checking for the same things, that my bellows are rising and falling adequately, I'm not sacking breaths, and I'm returning close to 0 centimeters of water, and that my unidirectional valves are moving appropriately. So with that, I will stop it with my bellows filled all the way to the top, and I can do my final checkout. So what will happen is I'll put my machine on standby. So once I've done that and shut it off, I'll take my bag and hook this up, put my mouthpiece back on. I'll exercise my circuit, and I'll squeeze the bag and feel that I feel air coming out of it, and I do. So that's exercising your circuit. I'll also take one quick look at my circuit and make sure there's no cracks in the tubing, and I put that back. Then I flip this into standby. I make sure that my APL valve is open. My unidirectional valves are flat and seated. My circuit is reading 0 centimeters of water. I have no flows going, so no air or oxygen or nitrous being delivered. And that my vaporizers are off as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See ya.
Check it out, check it out, check it out.